You slowpoke!
The moment my husband saw me rush into the hospital room, he shouted at me from his bed.
You're late! I had an accident, and you couldn't even get here quickly. A wife is a wife because she devotes herself to her husband no matter what happens. I'm going to need you to take care of me from now on, but this is exactly why you...
You don't have to go that far. I came as fast as I could after getting the call that you were rushed to the hospital. Feeling both relieved that his life wasn't in danger and angry that those were the first words he had for a worried wife, something else caught my attention. There was a woman lying in the bed next to my husband. Apparently, due to a shortage of rooms, they were sharing one temporarily. And then, the moment I saw her face. What? I understood everything. At that moment, it was decided. There would be no one left to care for him. And the only thing my husband would have left was the irony of the accident's lasting effects. My name is Nancy, and I'm a working wife with a full-time job. I've been married to my husband, Jason, for about 10 years now. We used to be a close couple, but lately, we've hardly spoken to each other. It's not like we had a big fight or anything, but it seems like we've hit a rough patch. No matter what I say, Jason only gives me half-hearted responses. It's not just when we talk in person. When I send him messages on his phone, he just reads them without replying. With that kind of treatment, I've started to feel like talking to him is pointless. I've heard that this happens to a lot of couples after they've been married for a long time, so I try to tell myself it's just part of life. But even so, it's hard not to feel lonely. Then, one day, Jason spoke to me out of the blue. I was so surprised that he started a conversation that I immediately braced myself, wondering what it could be about. But it wasn't anything serious.
I've gotten into baseball lately. I didn't like it or hate it before, so I only knew the basic rules, but it's actually pretty deep.
Like I said, we hadn't had a real conversation in ages. So when he suddenly started talking about something so trivial, I couldn't help but wonder if he was talking to someone else besides me for a second. After all, it's just the two of us in this house. Still confused, I replied. Really? What got you into it all of a sudden? Jason's eyes lit up as he continued.
A while ago, my boss invited me to a baseball game. Honestly, I thought it would be a hassle, but he got the tickets, so I went. Until then, I always thought baseball was just about whether you hit the ball or not, but it turns out there's a lot more strategy to it. Like the batting order, the field positions, it's all calculated. I was really impressed. I guess my boss's explanations were good, too. Back in school, most of the guys on the baseball team were arrogant and looked down on others, so I had a bad image of the sport. But seeing the pros play, it's different.
Jason went on, saying.
And you know, there's also...
He didn't stop talking after that. To be honest, I'm not interested in baseball, so most of what he said went over my head. But I was just happy that Jason was talking to me, so I listened as intently as I could. Since that day, my husband started going to watch baseball games frequently on his days off. We share the housework, so when Jason isn't home on weekends, my workload increases. But I couldn't bring myself to complain, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this would be the chance for us to rebuild our relationship. With that thought in mind, I spent my weekends seeing Jason off with a have a good time. However, that hope was nothing but a fleeting dream. To cut to the chase, our relationship never improved. Jason started going to baseball games more and more, eventually spending every weekend at the stadium, leaving me to spend my days alone. I could have accepted this if our conversations had at least increased, but after that one day, our talks dwindled again. Even when I asked, "How was today's game?" he only told me whether they won or lost. One time, he even said,
Why does it matter to you if they won or lost?
Looking back, maybe he was just tipsy from drinking beer at the stadium when he spoke to me that day. Realizing that, I couldn't help but start resenting baseball. If he's going so often, he could at least invite me. As this went on, my frustrations grew, especially with the extra load of housework. I finally decided to confront Jason about it. "Hey, Jason. Don't you think you're going to too many baseball games lately? You haven't helped with anything around the house, not last week or the week before. I'm not saying you can't have a hobby, but we live together, you know? I'm the one doing all the cleaning, cooking, and laundry. Can't you at least cut back a little and help out?" I said this to him while he was eating dinner after coming home from work. I knew it wasn't the best time. No one likes to be confronted about something like that, especially after a long day. But since he spends his weekends at the ballpark, I had no choice. Jason sighed, clearly annoyed, and replied,
I'm paying for it with my own money, so what's the problem? Besides, it's baseball season, and my favorite team's been doing great lately. Once you've seen them win a few games, you just want to keep going. If you're upset about me slacking off with the chores, then you should slack off too. I don't care if you clean less often, and if there's no food in the house, I'll just eat out. We've got a laundromat nearby for the washing. Unlike couples our age, we don't have kids, so we've got plenty of money. If we're not struggling, we can save energy by spending a little. If that's not enough for you, then maybe we should just live separately.
I tried to argue back. It's not about that. But Jason cut me off.
Enough!
He put his chopsticks down.
The food's already not that great, and now you've made it worse. I'm going to bed.
And with that, he walked off to the bedroom. All I wanted was for him to cut back on the baseball a little, but I never expected it to end up hurting me more. Was I the one in the wrong? The more I thought about it, the less I knew what to do. One thing, however, became clear. Jason had no intention of meeting me halfway. Not only did he refuse to cut back on his baseball games, but he even started going to games after work on weekdays, as if to spite me. Because of Jason's attitude, I was feeling increasingly stressed. And one day during lunch, I ended up venting to my boss, Lauren, whom I was close with. Lauren had looked after me ever since I was a new hire, and she'd been promoted to manager a few years ago. I respected and trusted her. I thought maybe she would understand, but what she said caught me off guard.
Well, baseball is pretty fun. I can kind of see why your husband's so into it. Actually, I'm a fan of the same team your husband supports.
I had no idea Lauren was into baseball. Maybe I'd picked the wrong person to complain to. Sensing my disappointment, she added,
Sorry. But don't you think it's a little strange that he's going to games almost every day? I mean, sure, there are people who do that, and tickets aren't that expensive compared to other sports or concerts, but have you thought about the possibility he might be cheating?
The thought of Jason cheating had never crossed my mind before, but suddenly, I felt a wave of anxiety. How had I not considered this? It wasn't unheard of for couples in a rut like ours.
You could just ask him to show you his phone. Let me check your phone.
I hesitated at her suggestion. If he wasn't cheating, wouldn't that just make things worse? But, then again, nothing would change if I did nothing. And snooping around behind his back seemed even worse. So, I decided to take Lauren's advice. When Jason came home from work, I stood in front of him. Show me your phone.
Huh? Why?
Of course, anyone would be annoyed if their spouse asked them this right after walking in the door. It must have felt incredibly unpleasant. But I'd already said it, and I wasn't going to back down now. I mean it. I insisted. Jason sighed and, with a look of mild frustration, pulled his phone out of his bag, unlocked it, and handed it to me. I took the phone and started searching through his messages, looking for anything that might indicate he was cheating. I checked everything from chat histories to social media apps. I must have spent about 15 minutes scrolling through his phone. During that time, Jason didn't say anything, he just stared at the ceiling. In the end, I found nothing. No suspicious conversations, no inappropriate images or videos, not even any questionable website history. His phone was squeaky clean. I felt a strange sense of discomfort. It was too clean. But without any evidence, there was nothing more I could do. Sorry, I muttered, handing his phone back. Jason took it without much reaction.
I'm going to take a bath.
He passed by me and went to the bathroom. For a while after that, I was left with a lingering sense of unease. When I told Lauren that I didn't find any evidence of cheating, she seemed relieved.
Well, that's good news.
But for me, nothing was resolved. Despite all my venting, the real problem wasn't the possibility of him cheating. The real issue was that he was neglecting his responsibilities at home because of baseball. All Lauren had done was bring up a new problem, and I'd simply confirmed it wasn't the case. However, those days came to a sudden end one day. It was a holiday, and Jason was getting ready to go to another baseball game as usual. The only difference this time was that he said he was going to drive. Until then, he'd always taken the train to the games. The weather wasn't bad, and our car's tires were worn out since it was due for an inspection. I didn't know where he planned to go, but I advised him that it wasn't a good idea to drive long distances for safety reasons. Jason, however, didn't care to listen.
I'm not asking for permission. I'm just giving you a heads up. I don't need your approval.
Hearing that, I didn't feel like I had any right to stop him. Fine, do whatever you want, I said as I tossed the car keys to him. I had long since stopped asking him to cut back on the baseball games. The last time I had complained, Jason told me I should slack on the housework too. He said we could hire help or that we could live separately if I didn't like it. What's the point in saying anything to someone like that? The only reason we were still married at this point was probably because there wasn't a solid reason to divorce yet. Jason grabbed the keys and headed toward the door, still looking at his phone. As he stepped outside, I saw him smirking at something on his screen. That smile triggered a thought I had been avoiding. Could he really be cheating? And this time, I was almost sure of it, with that gut feeling only women seem to have. I pulled out my phone and opened a certain app. A while back, when Jason had shown me his phone, I secretly downloaded a location-sharing app onto it. I figured if I ever found proof of him cheating, this app might come in handy. Even though I hadn't found anything suspicious that day, I never deleted the app. Now, it seemed like the day had come for it to serve its purpose. With a mix of excitement and nerves, I checked Jason's location. He was still at home, probably in the car getting ready. Go wherever you want, I thought to myself, staring intently at the screen. But even after 20 minutes, the location didn't change. That was odd. Curious, I went to check the parking lot. The car wasn't there. Jason had already left. Strange. Did he forget his phone? I looked around, but there was no sign of another phone. I was certain he had his phone when he left the house. Did he figure out I'd installed the app? If so, it wouldn't be surprising if he was angry about it. But he hadn't shown any signs of being upset. As I kept turning this over in my mind, I realized an hour had passed. Not wanting to waste my entire day off like this, I decided to stop overthinking. Time should be used more meaningfully. I turned on the TV to watch the news, and there was a report of a traffic jam caused by an accident on a nearby highway. Jason's probably stuck in that traffic right now. Maybe he'll be late to the game. Serves him right. He doesn't treat his wife well, so he deserves this. I muttered to myself, almost unconsciously. Was my heart really this bitter now? I must be really exhausted. Just as I was thinking about taking a nap, my phone rang. When I answered, it was a call from the hospital.
Your husband has been brought to the hospital after an accident.
I quickly called a taxi and rushed to the hospital. Apparently, Jason had been in a car accident and suffered significant injuries. Thankfully, his life wasn't in danger, but there was a chance he could have lasting complications. I was asked to bring him some clothes since he would need to be hospitalized. When I arrived at the reception and was shown to his room, I found Jason lying there with bandages and gauze covering parts of his body. As I approached him, about to say something, he spoke first.
You're late, you slowpoke! My wife, of all people, should have been here right away after hearing her husband was in an accident. A wife is supposed to serve her husband no matter what happens. Now I'll need you to take care of me, and yet, you can't even show up on time.
The nurse had told me Jason had deep wounds in his lower abdomen, neck, and forehead, but he seemed surprisingly energetic. At least energetic enough to berate me. But that wasn't what concerned me the most. What caught my attention was the phone sitting beside Jason and the presence of a female patient separated by a curtain nearby. It didn't make sense for Jason's phone to be there. After all, I had Jason's phone with me. When I was packing his clothes, I found it hidden in the drawer. No wonder the location tracker hadn't worked. Yet, according to the nurse, Jason had a phone in his pants pocket when he arrived. So now, there were two identical phones, one with me and one by Jason's side. It meant Jason had been carrying two identical phones all along. Then there was the female patient. The nurse had explained earlier that due to the hospital being crowded, she had temporarily been placed in the same room as Jason. She had also been in the accident with him. From her bed, I could hear faint groans of pain. Who was this woman who had been with my husband? I considered pulling back the curtain to see her face when someone entered the room, someone I recognized. The man gave me a slight nod and then pulled back the curtain to speak to the woman.
Thank God you're safe. I need you to stick around a little longer. Lauren!
The moment I heard him speak, I remembered who he was. Lauren's husband. I recognized him from a photo she had once shown me. I hesitated but then spoke up. Excuse me. I gave the usual greeting, explaining how his wife had always been so kind to me. Then, I introduced myself as Jason's wife and apologized for the accident. Upon hearing that, Lauren's husband's eyes widened, and Jason mumbled "oh no" as he pulled the blanket over his head.
Nice to meet you. I'm Lauren's husband. There's no need for you to apologize for the accident. By the way, if you have a moment, feel free to visit Lauren. She hit her head hard on the steering wheel and lost a few front teeth as well. Apparently, your husband was the driver. I wonder what they were doing to cause such a crash.
He said this with a meaningful tone, and suddenly everything made sense. I had been wondering myself how Jason managed to injure his lower abdomen in the accident. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Do you have time?
Gladly.
Jason, who had been listening from under the blanket, suddenly shouted.
Wait! How can you leave your injured husband unattended and go off with another man? That's disgraceful! Are you heartless?
I smiled at him and calmly responded. What are you talking about? As if I'd ever cheat on my husband. I'm not like some people. Jason's face went pale upon hearing that. My conversation with Lauren's husband went exactly as I had expected. The fortunate part was that not only had he noticed Lauren's affair, but he had also gathered solid evidence.
Your husband having two phones was probably Lauren's idea. I hired a private investigator to gather photos and evidence, and one of them shows the two of them entering a phone shop together.
It became clear that Lauren's advice for me to check Jason's phone was part of their plan. Once I was convinced there was no affair, it would be hard to change my mind. That's why she pushed me to check in the first place. Now I understood why Jason's phone was so spotless. He wasn't using the new phone for Lauren, but instead to deceive me. I had been played.
It's partly true that they were going to baseball games, but they were always going together. They'd watch day games and then spend the night at a hotel. Quite the schedule, huh?
He laughed bitterly as he said it. Here is epilogue. I accepted Lauren's husband's offer when he said,
If you want a divorce, I'll help you.
He introduced me to a lawyer, and I began my revenge against Jason. That doesn't mean I did anything special. The divorce was a given, and I filed for alimony for the affair and compensation for the damage to the car, targeting both Jason and Lauren. Even such a simple, justified course of action would be a massive blow to them, especially with the injuries and lasting effects they suffered from the accident. When I told Jason about my intention to divorce, he broke down in tears.
You're really going to abandon your husband in this condition? You traitor! You think an affair hurt you? Get real! I've suffered way more than that. Didn't the doctor tell you? I lost my ability as a man because of this accident. And there could be other complications too. Come on! It was just a mistake, okay? You can forgive 1 or 2 affairs, can't you? It's like in baseball. They say it's not over until 2 outs. Please?
You were the one who betrayed me first. And I don't really know much about baseball, but in the game of cheating, it's game over after 1 strike. Lauren, who had been listening from the side, also exploded.
After all I've done for you!
She was practically hysterical, shouting all sorts of insults. But since she had lost her front teeth, it was hard to make out what she was actually saying. It was disappointing to see someone I once admired as a dignified, serious, and reliable boss reduced to such a state. But since she was fired after all this, she wasn't my boss anymore. Lauren's ex-husband also took legal action, and before long, both Jason and Lauren were buried in debt. They could only afford the bare minimum of treatment for their injuries. In the end, they moved in together, thinking at least they could support each other. But Jason's injuries left him with complications that made even going to the bathroom difficult, earning him the nickname Stinky Old Man, while Lauren couldn't afford to fix her teeth, and the local kids started calling her Toothless Hag. Their home eventually became known as the haunted house, and they were shunned by their neighbors. It was all their own doing. I hope they find comfort in supporting each other through the dark days ahead, like a doomed battery powering their equally doomed lives. So, how did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.